Hi there, this is David and welcome to the Dungeons of Final Fantasy IV ranked from worst to best. Here, we're going to be looking at all the mainline dungeons of the original game and ranking them based upon their fun factor, how inspired the dungeon design is, and just the coolness factor of it all. I know it's completely subjective, but whatever, it's all in good fun. So, let's go ahead and get started. Number 17, the Sylph Cave. I hate this cave. It's easily the worst of the three optional dungeons. I mean, not only do you have to continually cast Float over and over again, but it's confusing with all of its hidden passages. And the treasures that you find really aren't all that hot either. But really the worst are the encounters. The Marlboros with their bad breath can decimate your party, and those annoying frog bitches take forever because they sit there and cast Toad over and over on you again. But the cherry on top is that you have to come down here 3 times to get everything. Once to get to the treasure room, another to find Yang, and a third time to actually wake him up and get the Sylph Summon. Number 16, the Sealed Cave. What were they on whenever they came up with this god-awful dungeon? Just about every door is actually a trapdoor, which will pretty much just instantaneously kill your party off. But then, just as you think that you've killed the door, it ends up transforming into a Chimera Brain or a Yellow Dragon, and it just completely annihilates you. And a good half of all those doors just lead to dead ends too. And if the trapdoors weren't enough to drive you insane, there's the regular encounters of vampire bats who take forever as they slowly drain your health away. But let's not talk about the boss. I remember fighting this guy like 10 times as a kid before finally beating it. And your reward for all of that? A stab in the back by Cain. Number 15, the Magnetic Cave. I really can't stand this cave. Final Fantasy IV definitely has instances of NES bullshit finding its way into the game, and this really is the epitome of it all. Not only do you have to go through this place with a horrible party configuration, but you have to do it completely handicapped by not equipping any of your new stuff. It's so utterly annoying. You literally just got your airship to fly around the world and grab all the cool stuff, only to not really be able to use it. You have to unequip all your stuff, buy new stuff, and then hold on to it all in your limited inventory. Also, how many of you have gotten to the Dark Elf only to then realize that you forgot to talk to Edward back in Troia? I have. Number 14, the Tower of Babel Underground. Not a fan. The mid-game has some pretty terrible dungeons, and as the first one in the Underworld, this is no exception. Thankfully, it is relatively straightforward, but it's 8 whole floors, and when you finally make it to Dr. Lug, can you escape? No, you can't. You're stuck. You have to walk all the way back down, watch Yang idiotically sacrifice himself, and then keep on walking down 6 more floors for just one tiny cutscene with Golbez. God forbid you can cast Exit. Number 13, the Tower of Zot. Okay, we're done with the really terrible dungeons now. This one isn't so bad as much as it's just kind of wasted potential. As Golbez's stronghold, and as a floating tower, it really just should have been so much cooler. However, reusing the same tile sets from the Tower of Babel just makes it feel lazy and redundant. The difficulty spike subdues a bit here since you can actually equip decent stuff, but your party configuration still sucks. At the top of the relatively short tower, you then face the Magus sisters, who gave me so much trouble whenever I was a kid. I remember the first time that I finally beat them, I happily rushed in to rescue Rosa, only to die to Barbaretia. God, I was pissed. Number 12, the Tower of Babel Overworld. This is the portion of the tower that you enter immediately after recruiting Edge. Your goal here is simple, to rescue his parents and to fight Rubicant. Thankfully, it's a rather stress-free jaunt showcasing Edge's skills. Rubicant himself isn't so bad, and the story with Edge's family is memorable. To top it all off, you're rewarded with an airship to traverse the underworld whenever you're done. Number 11, the Antlion Cave. I remember as a kid having so many problems with the Antlion. The cave itself is straightforward, and it does showcase Edward's utility with his harp and singing. The enemies are also much simpler than those found in the Waterway. There really aren't any weaknesses to exploit. The Antlion himself is much more complex because back then, I really didn't understand his counterattack AI script. Honestly, he's probably the first boss that really does require a real strategy, which is pretty much just Edward doing nothing and sitting on his ass. Number 10. Baron's Waterway. Here we have the second waterway of the game, and it's much shorter than the first, but it still features the same kinds of enemies. Thankfully though, you have a magically inclined party so you can easily deal with all of the elemental weaknesses. I do think it's a rather nice touch that you can take one of two paths. The first which sends you straight towards the exit, or a second or roundabout one with secret paths to collect treasure. It's short and to the point, and it serves as a good leveling spot to get Paladin Cecil up to par with the rest of your party. Number 9. The Mist Cave. For an introductory cave, this one's actually well done. It's manageable at only one screen, yet memorable with the misty atmosphere obscuring your view and the dragon taunting you the entire way through. The enemies are nothing that you can't handle, but they also introduce you to tidbits of strategy, like using jump against the sword rats to avoid their needle counterattack, and introducing you to status ailments with the moth's blind attack. Here, another Final Fantasy staple was introduced, the tutorial boss, who you can't just kill with brute force. The designers were very clever with what they actually included here. Number 8. The Giant of Babel. By the time that this guy comes around, I'm so over the stupid Tower of Babel that I just want to punch his face in myself. The cutscene beforehand with the giant destroying everything in his path and having all your party members come out of the woodwork is really nice. And the dungeon itself is too. It's not too terribly long or mazy, and has plenty of nice grinding spots, and you know that you're ready for an epic showdown when you have to fight all 4 fiends at once as well as the difficult CPU boss. Then, it all culminates with an epic plot twist and Kain finally coming to his senses. Number 7. The Lunar Subterrane. As far as final dungeons go, this one actually isn't all that bad. Normally, they take forever and they drag on, but this one bucks the trend. The multiple passages all lead to amazing rewards guarded by optional super bosses. You can avoid them or take them on as you like. Save points are liberally scattered throughout, and the enemy encounters here aren't all that annoying. A nice touch is that while the dungeon will ultimately funnel you down to the final boss, there's still hidden passages for the avid explorer. And honestly, the only really bad part of the dungeon is the second half, as you go down to the core, because the encounters ramp up in difficulty so much so that you pretty much have to run from every single one unless you want to be down there for hours. Number 6. The Feymarch. This is the second of the optional dungeons discussed, and while the Sylph Cave was god-awful, this place isn't so terrible. Yeah, you still have to cast the float spell all the time, but there aren't as many stairs as the Sylph Cave, so it's not as bad. And even if it didn't have the damage tiles, you would still want to cast float anyway because the Arachnes and their quake spell. That hot spider bitch single-handedly makes this place a good grinding spot, and there's plenty of treasure hidden around in all the secret rooms. To top it all off, the reward of the Land of the Summoned Monsters at the bottom is such a fantastic and unique payoff. Number 5. The Lair of the Father. Of the 3 optional dungeons, this one is easily the best. There's no annoying damage tiles, and the treasures that are here provide you with some of the best equipment in the game. The test of strength against Bahamut at the end is also a test of your skills and your strategy, as brute force will not win the day. The cave is short enough to be traversed in roughly 10 minutes or so, and adding to the epic factor are the 3 mandatory behemoth fights as well. Number 4. The Cave to Eblan. Although this dungeon does introduce the incredibly annoying vampire bats that take forever to kill, I still like it. You can only access it by the shoals, so the first screen being a variation of the waterfall cave is quite nice. And then incorporated into the cave itself is the town of Eblan. I always think that it's cool when developers create unique towns like this. After the town, the cave changes once again as the hidden passages open up, and you follow the trail of dying soldiers as they chase down Edge and Rubicant, to finally round out your party nicely. Number 3. Mount Hobs. The 2 mountain dungeons of the game are actually pretty similar upon analysis. In both, you have to remove a barrier before you begin, then you get some storytelling and insight into your characters, and upon reaching the summit, you have a big bad boss fight. To really tie them together though, they're both swarming with hordes of undead as well. Mount Hobs is where the training wheels come off. Cecil finally has a full 5-person party, each fulfilling different roles. And the Mom Bomb boss with Yang at the top can be a game ender if you don't defend, heal, and take your time. Number 2. Mount Ordeals. This is a pretty fun one. I always like when storyline is incorporated seamlessly into a dungeon and it's not just simply a path to a boss. Not only does your party run into Tella during your ascent, but we learn more about the twins too, and of course, Cecil becomes a paladin, drastically changing his character arc as well as your battle strategies. The first of the 4 fiends, Scarmiglione, is here to impede your progress twice. I mean, there's just something about climbing a mountain, seeing the clouds above and the forests below, and you can kind of like feel that wind blowing through your hair as you fight off the hordes of the undead. I really also like the design choice of using undead, as it showcases how limited your utility was with Cecil as a Dark Knight, only for him to just tear through them on your descent as a paladin. And finally, number 1, the Underground Waterway. Here, we've made it to number 1, and let me tell you why. First, there's the atmosphere. There's all the various bridges over the water, crevices, and ravines, as well as the hidden rooms and paths that really make this place feel alive. The enemy variety is top-notch, and it's a nice training ground to teach you about elemental weaknesses. How the fish are weak against lightning, the alligators to ice, and the undead weak to fire. It also shows you Cecil's shortcomings as a Dark Knight, and how he's really unable to damage the undead. I love the secret passageway under the falls to the treasure room, and the encounter with Tella, who gives you explicit instruction on how to use the newly implemented save points in the campfire scene. Uniquely, the dungeons actually split into 2 different parts. I love how you can go outside into the valley to use a tent, and then head right back in for the confrontation with Octomem after falling down the waterfall. There's no turning back now, your real journey has just begun, and you have to push yourself forward. Well, that's it for the Dungeons of Final Fantasy IV Ranked. If you like this video and what I do here on the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon for exclusive videos and early access to my content, or coming on over to my Discord to chat and hang out. The links to them both can be found in the video description. This has been David. If you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.